Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of the unfortunately not so regular Marc Tech Check podcast. This is a written intro that I will be making available later on as a VOD on my channel, so please bear with me for now as we go through this without me as per usual reacting to chat and such. This Tuesday we had the interestingly named Wanderlust Apple event. So how wondrous exactly was it, and how much lust did it create in all of us? Well, in my opinion, the event was a real success. Maybe not a giant one, but a success nonetheless. The MVP of the event to me was the pricing, which stayed the same in USD when you normalize for the storage configurations of the previous gen. In my region, Germany, the prices actually went down, being adjusted for the strengthening of the euro versus the US dollar. I know other major regions have had price increases, which include Japan, China, and India, but by now we pretty much understand that currency fluctuations are something that Apple does simply not tolerate. And I hope those countries can see a price correction next year if their currency sees some rebound against the US dollar. So let's get to the actual products that we got during Apple's Wanderlust event. Mainly, let's start with the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 15 Plus. The base level iPhone this year gets a lot of iPhone 14 Pro specs, including the A16 chip and the brighter screen, which unfortunately though still lacks any kind of high refresh rate support, but thankfully adopts the dynamic island from the 14 Pro, instead of the dreaded old notch that we've been kind of burdened with since the iPhone 10 days. The 48 megapixel main camera sounds very similar to the iPhone 14 Pro, but is not exactly the same, neither from the 14 Pro or to the 15 Pro main camera. It is based on a slightly smaller sensor, however this one is a stacked Sony sensor, and it's paired with a larger f/1.6 aperture as compared to an f/1.78 aperture in the 14 Pro and the 15 Pro. I'm actually really looking forward to real world results, because those might actually turn out really fascinating given the potential impact of those different sensor and lens technologies, or at least a different lens setup, and how those will affect low light photography, something that is very crucial for modern smartphones. The ultra-wide camera is pretty much unchanged, unfortunately still not offering the great macro mode that we know from the Pros, which is especially a shame for somebody like me who is coming from the 13 Pro and that already had a macro mode, so not seeing it trickle down after 2 years is definitely a bummer. Beyond that, Apple advertises big improvements to smart HDR functionality and portrait mode capture across all iPhone 15 models. So it will be actually interesting to see how new hardware and new software fare in challenging lighting scenarios and how they stack up versus the competition. As was long rumored, the iPhone 15 now offers USB-C, finally making a reality of charging your iPhone, your iPad, and your Mac with the same cable. But it is unfortunately limited to only USB 2.0 data transfer speeds, or to be more precise, to 480 megabits per second. So there definitely is another bummer there, and charging speeds are still advertised as pretty much the same ones, still based on 20 to like 27 watt charging. Apple is not very precise here. Let's see what real world testing will yield. The aluminum chassis has a slightly curved design, however the overall design language is still far closer to the iPhone 12 than it is to the much more rounded iPhone 10, or even going back to something like the iPhone 6. The iPhone 15 and 15 Plus retain the same $799 and $899 starting prices, with the same storage configuration starting at 128 gigabytes. They're available in pink, yellow, green, blue, and black. However, the colors have created kind of a lot of controversy, at least in my opinion, with just how muted the colors are. Apple has been on a years-long trend on getting the color out of colorful iPhones, and as somebody who adored the colors on the iPhone 12 series and to a degree on some of the iPhone 13 models, seeing really the color just completely washed out of them to the point where I could not see the blue in the blue model, I'm slightly colorblind, please forgive me, was a really, really big disappointment to me. Now I'm not getting the base iPhone models and I'm kind of not recommending them, but that's a different point altogether that we will also get to later on. So let's get to the iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max models. Those pick up on a lot of the improvements that I already mentioned. So if we take the aluminum chassis from the iPhone 15, that now turns into a titanium chassis on the 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max. It comes in 4 colors, including natural titanium, blue, white, and black. All colors are designed to sort of retain the natural finish of titanium, but of course the natural one will be the one that is the most close to the Apple Watch Ultra, or just how you expect titanium to be in most products. The titanium also helps bring down the weight by around 19 grams on both models, a much needed improvement in my opinion, because historically the Pros have been just a tad too heavy once we started moving beyond the XS Max models. So this is a really, really solid and needed correction into the right direction. The Pros now also look more futuristic than ever, offering the thinnest bezels of any flat screen phone on the market, measuring just 1.55 millimeters. Interestingly enough, on the back it looks pretty much unchanged, and even a new camera on the back, the 5X that replaces the 3X on the Pro Max, is still designed to look pretty much identical. So this old myth of Apple changing design just for changing the design's sake so that they can advertise it to consumers should be for one, it should have been dead long ago, but it should definitely die with this generation. If Apple wanted to, they could have done a ton more design changes to this iPhone, but they clearly like to maintain certain build standards that they are used to by now, and having a similar layout gen to gen internally, it definitely helps with that. A new action button replaces the previous mute switch, and it enables customized access to apps and features such as the camera, flashlight, magnifier, voice memos, and pretty much whatever else you can imagine, given that it also integrates with the Shortcuts app. This is really, really cool, and the Shortcuts app has been getting a lot of functionality as third-party apps have really embraced it over the last couple of years. So this will really supercharge the iPhone, especially if you also combine it with something like the double and triple tap functionality on the back, giving you kind of a lot more quick access buttons than you ever had before, especially on an iPhone that are obviously iPhones are more customizable than ever, but let's be honest, in the Android world, a lot of this was previously possible, but the way it all integrates into software, now gets support from third parties, that is kind of a unique Apple take on customizability and quick access. The A16 from the 14 Pro and the base 15 is upgraded to an A17 Pro, finally moving away from the years-long trend of calling their A-series chips as bionic, whatever that means. Not all branding makes a ton of sense on Apple's part. It boasts a 10% faster CPU, a 20% faster GPU, double the neural engine performance, and 8 gigs of RAM. On top of that, it also pushes mobile gaming, or gaming, Apple gaming, further than ever for iOS, iPhones, and potentially as its architecture comes into newer Apple chips like the M3. So this will be a big improvement for gaming. How does it do that? Well, it supports hardware accelerated ray tracing, and it also supports AI-based image upscaling through MetalFX and using the much faster neural engines. Huge games like RE4, RE Village, Assassin's Creed Mirage, and Death Stranding will be coming to the iPhone 15 Pro later this year and early next year. Also looking at different specifications that kind of look the same is the USB-C port. The USB-C port on the Pros is a huge improvement over the non-Pros and therefore also over older Lightning on previous generation iPhones. It offers 20 times higher data transfer support at 10 gigabits per second versus the previously mentioned 480 megabits per second. Unfortunately for both models, neither comes natively in the box with a USB 3 speed cable, so you will have to buy an extra one, and unfortunately Apple does not even sell you one. They either make you choose between a basic USB 2 speed cable or a Thunderbolt cable, which is much more expensive, especially if you go for one of the much longer models. Though thankfully at least the included 1 meter cable is now a braided one. Unfortunately though, it's not color matched and it's not 1.6 meters as was rumored in the lead up to the launch of the iPhone 15 Pro. So you win some, you lose some. Am I right? The camera hardware is pretty similar to last year's models, at least on the non-Max Pro, but Apple's claims about improvements to high dynamic range with Smart HDR5, a 24 megapixel mode, and a lot more, including the improvements to portrait capturing, promise a solid year-on-year upgrade over the 14 Pro. And if you're coming from an older model, to me, I'm coming from the 13 Pro Max. I know a lot of people will come from substantially older models. To those people, this will be a really substantial camera upgrade, especially if the A17 Pro really has a highly improved image signal processor. Let's see what real-world results really deliver here. On top of that, it will also later this year support spatial video recording, specifically designed to work with the Apple Vision Pro headset, coming early next year. Unfortunately, only in the US though for now. The Pro Max moves its 3x telephoto zoom camera up to 5x, so it's still technically behind a lot of like 10x competitors, though it should be mentioned that Apple's telephoto setup has a wider aperture and a larger sensor than what Samsung is using for their Periscope 10x zoom camera. Again, real-world results will be crucial here. This Tetra Prism design, as Apple calls it, is currently exclusive to the Pro Max because of size considerations, at least according to Apple. It's definitely designed to also be a differentiating factor between the Pro and Pro Max, and it allows Apple to justify changing the base storage configuration on the 15 Pro Max, essentially removing the previous 128 gigabytes and starting at 256 gigabyte models, but we'll get to pricing a little later. All 15 and 15 Pro models get faster 5G. Again, a lot of peak advertised speeds, which Apple really avoids, but maybe if you just consider like looking up the specs of the supported Snapdragon modem, they pretty much are never reachable in real-world scenarios, but some early tests are showing pretty positive results. They also all support a new second-generation ultra-wideband chip, to that point a little bit more later on. However, Wi-Fi 6E, with its support for 6 GHz and faster data transfer speeds, is limited to the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. However, it's kind of nice to see it because for 2 years we've been sort of playing with the thought of, is it finally coming to a new iPhone? Is it not? And this is the generation we are finally getting Wi-Fi 6E, while also the rest of the industry is slowly transitioning towards Wi-Fi 7. So let's see if maybe next year's iPhone 16 Pro will then have Wi-Fi 7, and then the iPhone 16 non-Pro will get Wi-Fi 6E from this year's 15 Pro. However, here we are only talking speculatively. The iPhone 15 Pro starts at the same $999 with the same 128GB starting configuration as the iPhone 14 Pro did last year. And as I mentioned before, the 15 Pro Max now gets rid of its 128GB model, which would have cost $1,099, but because it now starts with 256GB models, it starts at $1,199, the same price for 256GB as on the 14 Pro Max. Effectively, we don't have a price increase this year on any, at least in US dollar, on any iPhone model if normalizing for the storage. And given that we are now 3 or 4 years into debating when we are finally getting a base iPhone Pro price increase, right? We've been stuck, or happily stuck, with the same $999 starting price since 2017 with the iPhone 10, despite all the inflationary pressure of previous years. To me, this is a very, very big positive and a massive W for Apple, and why I previously mentioned that pricing, to me, is the MVP of this event. This is obviously not a complete list of all iPhone 15 and 15 Pro improvements, but I think it outlines the most important changes. In my opinion, the Pros are worth it more than ever over the base models, thanks to their superior materials that don't anymore come with a huge weight penalty in previous years, especially on the original iPhone 12 redesign. I really encourage people to get the regular 12 versus the 12 Pro because their technical differences were so small. The battery life wasn't really better on the Pro, but you got a substantially lighter and more comfortable device with the base 12. Now that the weights are much closer together, now I can really recommend the Pros to anybody who felt burdened, let's say, by the weight of previous generation Pros, especially the 13 Pro and 14 Pro, which obviously are some of the heaviest phones ever in their Max variants. They also have faster performance. Again, you won't be blown away by the difference of the A16 versus the A17 unless you consider ray tracing. However, it still is a nice improvement with 2 gigs of extra RAM, giving you a little bit more future-proofness. So this is definitely something worth considering. And the main point to me is the display. Now, while the brightness is now matched between the iPhone 15 and the 15 Pro, which is actually kind of impressive for an LTPS panel on the non-Pro 15s, the Pros still have superior LTPO panels that support ProMotion with up to 120 Hz variable refresh rate, always on display, and just in general, the Pros are more Pro versatile with features such as Wi-Fi 6E and a much faster USB-C port. So those are definitely things to consider here. The arguably lesser part of the event were the upgrades for the Apple Watch Series 9 and the Apple Watch Ultra 2. Both get much brighter screens, with the Apple Watch Series 9 offering up to 2000 nits, up from 1000, and the Apple Watch Ultra 2 supporting an insane 3000 nits rating, up from previous generations' 2000 nits. Both now feature an S9 chip that is supposedly around 30% faster, but significantly more efficient. I'm saying but because maybe some expected a larger increase, but both generations of iPhone definitely, and of iPhone and Apple Watch improvements, seem to focus more on efficiency and on specialized parts of the hardware rather than raw compute improvements. One part of such big improvements is the 2 times faster neural engine inside the S9 chip, which now allows you to process Siri inputs on device natively, which, if you've tested out Siri on previous Apple Watches and how they have to transfer data back and forth to the iPhone, or even with their relatively slow LTE chips, this will be a massive improvement, but also a win potentially for privacy and security. Working with improvements to existing sensors, the S9 chip on both new Apple Watches enables a so-called double tap gesture, though I ironically did a triple tap for some reason, that has already kind of turned into a very positive meme across Apple circles. This input method allows you to quickly stop a timer, play and pause music, answer calls, reply to messages and more, all without ever looking at the screen of your Apple Watch. That feature existed before and kind of exists in other Apple Watches as an accessibility feature. However, Apple advertises this that because of the speed of the S9 and certain changes to sensors, for example, the sensors that could even measure stuff like your blood flows going to your fingers, this is how they were able to integrate this feature natively into watchOS 10, specifically for the Apple Watch Series 9 and the Apple Watch Ultra 2. The same second generation ultra-wideband chip, as I've mentioned on the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro, also enables smart integration with HomePods or to precision find an iPhone that you potentially left behind somewhere. So a great improvement to the Find My network and ultra-wideband that now works across far wider distances than the one chip did. So a lot of needed small improvements that are very welcome nonetheless, even though they might not excite and create the kind of headlines that will claim that a new generation is revolutionary. However, I'm the kind of user who will take what he can get as long as the prices are reasonable. And similar to the iPhone, both the Apple Watch Series 9 and Ultra 2 remain the same prices as the previous generation, starting at $399 and $799 respectively. The Series 9 is available in aluminum finishes like pink, midnight, starlight, silver, and red, and also, of course, it still retains its stainless steel variants that start at $699, though of course they are by default cellular, and those come in either gold, silver, or graphite. And now finally getting to my biggest disappointment of the event, the Apple Watch Ultra 2, which I ordered, so I still very much like it, only comes in a natural titanium look, not in the space black color that was rumored. And as a final small very positive thing that is that all S9 powered Apple Watches come with 64 gigs of storage space, up from 32 gigabytes on the previous generation. A fascinating announcement during the event was a bigger than ever focus on the environment, making the new Apple Watches and many of their bands some of Apple's first carbon neutral products. This does have a significant impact on Apple's accessories strategy, though, now replacing all leather products with ones based on their new FineWoven alternative. You can find an early impressions video here on this channel where I compare leather and FineWoven Apple cases like this, and where I speculate on how well each one will stack up in the future. So thank you all so much for listening, and to anybody watching this as a separate VOD on my channel, please consider watching the full stream that will be starting obviously in just a few seconds. We'll go through other topics here, such as when exactly will Apple update their Lightning accessories to something based on USB-C, and of course whatever other topic chat might distract me with. Who knows, maybe we'll go crazy and discuss the future of like iPhone 16 already. So without further ado and with a big thank you, let's get started with the mainstream. So guys, I've gone through like the intro section, and you can see next to it is actually where I've prepared my intro. So if anybody is curious, this is how my intros look like if they're 25 minutes long. But we'll be getting here to our like well-treaded grounds with Mac rumors and stuff like that. It's actually interesting because it's kind of hard to decide what to talk about exactly. I'll just briefly make sure that the stream actually like works well. Yeah, I know Sunday is not like the greatest day for streaming, depending on the hour that I choose. I should have like started 2 hours ago, according to my YouTube studio like recommendations. But hey, it is what it is. And we also don't have to make it that much longer than it needs to be. Now, I did cover obviously a lot of Wonderlust recap stuff. And throughout my previous videos, you guys have also seen a lot of opinions of mine on this. Now let's get very quickly into USB-C accessories. I think this is very interesting to a lot of people, mainly because, well, we all now want one cable, one port to rule them all, even though technically not all cables will be the right cable given the lack of USB 3 functionality and stuff like that. Certainly the lack of Thunderbolt functionality on most cables. But let's say just the port, right? And we got USB-C AirPods Pro. In fact, we will actually get to a different like detail of USB-C AirPods Pro, which I've thus far not covered, because quite honestly I didn't fully understand it. I still am pretty confused, and I'm kind of waiting for any details from Apple. But yeah, let's get directly into when we're seeing USB-C AirPods non-pros and AirPods Max, basically. This is coming from Marc, who did his weekly Power On newsletter. It's nothing really worth like reading by itself. He just he did this like indirectly, the iPhone 15 generation, suggesting that the 16 one will kind of be a little bigger, without going into detail, as he tends to do, unless he really knows that there will be a media cycle created, and he knows right now there really won't be. So he just covered what is actually interesting to me, and this is why I'm covering it as well. Obviously not suggesting that Marc covered this specifically for me. So he expects that USB-C versions of the Magic Mouse, the Magic Trackpad, and the Magic Keyboard will be released alongside the next iMac. Now, did he say when that iMac is coming out? Kind of not really. I mean, there is still the potential that it will be coming out like an M3 based iMac later this year, maybe even in like 2 different sizes, because 24 inches just isn't that attractive to a lot of people, unfortunately, when it comes to a productivity focused desktop device. So let's just say late 2023, maybe sometime early 2024. Second, he said that the standard AirPods should be updated with a USB-C charging case in 2024, so that's interesting, though again, nothing really surprising. Obviously at some point they would need to be updated. And then the AirPods Max will get the USB-C port, but this is like the most Marc Gurmany thing ever, because he does not give us any kind of predictions and when this is happening. I think people have been kind of burned with AirPods Max predictions, at least like I think there were supposed to be like new colors coming for it, which never panned out. So this is why I think he is really careful here. Previously he said that AirPods Max could be updated as early as next year, but that definitely is by no means a very definitive statement. However, I think it would be cool if Apple finally gives it a port that natively supports like lossless, if you connect USB-C to C on a MacBook Pro or like any kind of modern Mac. So that will be a big deal, I think, for a lot of like enthusiast level audiophile people. Last, he said that he expects a MagSafe battery pack and the MagSafe Duo charger to return, because as they are currently removed, or like we don't have something equivalent to supporting the iPhone 15. Though battery packs are actually interesting. They usually come out like a few months after the actual iPhone. So if they come out around December, that kind of would still make sense. Apple does like giving you new accessories when you are actually like, imagine you buy like an iPhone in September and then you sell it, then you buy an accessory for it for like the holidays. I think that's actually kind of meaningful. And those will return with USB-C ports, and they would need to be upgraded to like the latest standards. There were rumors about like stackable MagSafe batteries, so you could have like potentially more than one attached to your iPhone, but he does not reinvigorate those rumors in this specific reports. So this is pretty much the most interesting thing happening right now. Unfortunately, now we're getting iOS 17 tomorrow, and as I've said before, I will be covering iOS 17 once I had like a little time with the iPhone 15 Pro and basically the best version of iOS 17. And previously I did mention that the iPhone 15 Pro is getting a new titanium chassis. Now, in my previous videos, based on what Apple said and based on what we know from the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus, was that Apple is changing the internal architecture of the phone to make it easier repairable from both the front and the back, while previously the back has been kind of inaccessible to regular repairers or even like professional ones in a realistic sense. What that resulted in was usually if the back glass broke, the resulting repair was so substantial that it came with an extremely hefty price tag, and it also became something that pretty much required you to go to the Apple store and pay that fee. It's not something that you could do by yourself, at least in regards to what Apple advertises on their DIY repair program. This is now changing on the Pros. Last generation iPhone 14 and 14 Plus already had that new internal architecture that supported repairs from the front and the back, and now the 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max follow suit. And the result here is actually really interesting, is that the back repair cost moved down from $499 and $549 on the Pro Max, so the larger model is a little more expensive here, to $169 and $199. Now those might not be cheap, but this is far more of a repair price that I think people with a over $1,000 phone would actually be willing to pay. This is half the price of the base iPhone 15 Pro. This is, well, technically a little less than half the price, but if we had a 128GB model, it would be pretty much exactly half the price. This is actually good. This is less than 20%, which is really like much more attractive to do a repair on, a repair that will like lengthen the lifespan of a device. While with this, you're probably gonna like try to resell your iPhone for whatever price you can still get. Maybe run around with a broken glass and then like risk some of it falling off, and maybe you'll start to have to put a case on it, and then you might not even sure like what exactly is impacted on the inside of the phone, how that behaves with water resistance and stuff like that. So this is a huge change and a very welcome one. To anybody who wants to get AppleCare Plus, the back glass can be repaired for $29. This, again, I will not be obviously going into every single spec, every single news report on Mac rumors here. Supposedly the iPhone 15 Pro models max out at 27 watts instead of the rumored 35 watts, which would line up a little bit with Apple not advertising any higher speeds, charging speeds. So it is unclear where the website sourced this information from. This is from Mecha Takara, a Japanese blog. but it seems to confirm that the 15 Pro models have the same maximum charging speed as the 14 Pro models. Given that Apple advertised some like improvements to like charging to thermal efficiency thanks to the integration between the aluminum and the titanium, that's a little bit of a bummer. I think there definitely would have been some room for slightly faster charging, but given that batteries have only increased by like 1 to 2% in size, this will effectively result in the same charging speeds as last generation, and I have never been unhappy with my 13 Pro Max, which actually charges a little slower than these 27 watts. So to me, this is not, by no means is it a deal breaker, but it's not bad even to me, right? It could be better, but whatever. And by no means like last and least, but we have heard for a while that the 15 Pro Max would be Apple's like main model this generation, and what we're seeing right now is that the 15 Pro Max is enjoying really robust like sales. However, it is obviously limited in production because for whatever reason, maybe the camera and stuff like that, did have some early issues in production to create the necessary numbers. Now Apple is pretty much overcoming that, and by the holiday season I would expect pretty much all shortages to be over. Currently we do have some deliveries that slipped all the way into November. I personally am expecting my blue titanium iPhone 15 Pro Max with 1 terabyte to come between September 27th and October 3rd. So I'm definitely not one who was pushed into November. However, especially due to problems with the website, I also was not able to get one for day 1, which would be September 22nd. So that's a tiny bummer. And if we look at FineWoven, now there is not that much to cover here. I highly recommend you go check out my first impressions video on this, because my first impressions video is, well, it is kind of funny in that regard, because I've never done like an unboxing before. So this is the midnight blue, which is actually like the brightest midnight blue that I've ever seen from Apple on any accessory or stuff like that, for my upcoming 15 Pro Max, while simultaneously I bought the dark cherry leather case for my mom while it was still available like a week, like 2 weeks ago, and it finally arrived, and it was really great comparison point. Now my to take away some conclusions that I made in that video is, yeah, I definitely prefer leather to whatever Apple is doing with FineWoven. I have not hated the texture by any means in comparison to people like Zollotech, but I have found that it might be much more susceptible to easy damage through liquids and stuff like that. I have not done super extensive testing. I will be putting this on my 15 Pro Max for at least the first 2 to 3 weeks, and afterwards, if it really doesn't fare well, I will, as per usual, get a Pitaka aramid fiber case for my iPhone. Who knows, this might surprise me, and maybe in like a month I will be doing a follow-up video where I'll be saying I was wrong on Apple's FineWoven. I'm definitely sure that it will not be as bad as I might have feared at the peak of my first impressions video. However, it is important to me that people at least know what I've sort of found out. And that one definitely resulted in leather winning. It also feels nicer, looks a tad better in my opinion, as it reflects the light in a slightly more attractive way. And if it actually ends up being more durable, that kind of might be a big counterpoint to Apple's environmental push, because if you end up having to buy potentially 2 cases where you could get by with 1, right? And also leather is like known to like age in an attractive way. Then the benefits of going to a somewhat more carbon neutral material will be lost in comparison to still going with leather. That being said, both of these kick the absolute shit out of Apple silicone cases, which feel like regurgitated shit put onto your smartphone after 6 months. I don't care how light it is. I don't care how much money you save. It feels like absolute dog shit. Get a clear case if you don't want to get something made out of leather or FineWoven. In my regards, that will still be like the most attractive one, because it will also show the natural or like the color of your phone. I'm using the word natural for color as if like blue titanium is like a naturally occurring element. So yeah, it like this is how it looks in photos. It does not look quite the same way, but it definitely has like a fabric like feel to it, and a little bit you can see some of that texture visually. However, I would say this picture actually makes this look pretty bad, kind of too much jeans-like. I've covered that it is pretty jeans-like, but less so than it appears in this specific photo from Apple. And I kind of expect Apple to like advertise their accessories in a better way than I would do that. So this is definitely something interesting to me. Yeah, besides that, I don't actually have that much more to talk about, unless like more people join in the chat, because I know it's Sunday. I know you guys have definitely different plans. I had different plans for today, but spontaneously was a little more free. So this is why this video is happening. You know, I usually don't make videos on a Sunday. But the one thing that I might really want to go here is 9 to 5 Google, because I've been a little curious about what is happening with the Pixel 8 and the Pixel Watch. I do like covering Apple's competitors. Definitely, I'm a little more of a fan of Samsung than I am of Google. Though my in my opinion, the likability of Samsung has fallen a little over the last couple of years. So let's see, what do they mention here. Here's the new Pixel Watch 2 Metal Slim. Yeah, this looks like trash. I'm sorry. Like, I know some women really like, and obviously it's not like women exclusively, but I've never seen a man, gay, straight, or otherwise, wear something as thin as this. And I don't even know women who would wear something this thin. Like, and I do mean by thinness, I mean the width of the band. This looks actually pretty attractive. This looks a little bit like Apple's Milanese Loop. In my opinion, Apple's Milanese Loop looks finer and more refined, though I do assume this will be way cheaper. Also, going back to the Pixel Watch having this atrociously small screen with this super large bezel around it, a really big bummer, though I do like the dark color here. So let's see how they cover this. Maybe like we'll know some pricing or something like this. Google is updating and releasing new first-party bands, including Metal Slim and Metal Mesh. Images come because of the FCC. There are the 2 strap connectors, but the individual links, which look to be removable to allow for adjustments, are very narrow. Oh yeah. To anybody who knows like the Apple stainless steel link bracelet, or just bracelets like this in general, they're very like I would say coveted, but they're pretty easy to get for regular watches. The way you adjust them in size is obviously not something like this mesh band, but you would have to take out individual links to make it smaller, or put extra ones in to make it larger. Outwardly, they're pill shaped with a rectangular backing inside. I assume this is what they mean, right? Rounded here, rectangular inside. Though I do kind of assume that this was written by somebody who was just trying to get more words into the article. The image below shows it in a dark color that matches the matte black watch case. It's interesting. So, are we still getting like stainless steel pixel watches? Because I've heard rumors about it moving to aluminum. Now you can make aluminum still somewhat shiny. It's not easy. But I cannot tell by those pictures by themselves. Especially they call them like metal links. And like, what metal? Like, is it titanium? Is it for durability? Is it platinum for maximum pricing? Like, metals are covering kind of a lot. Okay, I'll not try to get too emotional about the Pixel Watch Gen 2. It is in the same family as the Middle Links band, but visually going in the opposite direction. Yeah, this looks bad, this looks good. Meanwhile, Google looks to be trying again with the Metal Mesh or Milanese band this year. It does not look to be different from the images. Okay, so that's not really exciting. Presumably any... Oh, there were like issues with... Oh, okay, that's interesting. They didn't launch. So no wonder Apple can get away with like higher prices if companies like Google don't even like launch their bands. Like, this is, by the way, what I think is funny, right? Like, Apple gets like made fun of for like not launching like the charging pad and stuff like that like years ago, but then companies somehow fail to make a band out of metal. Sure, I know it's like interwoven metallic fibers, you could say, but it's not like this hasn't been figured out for like 100 years plus. So yeah, don't get me started here. Sure, mass production might be difficult, but yeah, this is definitely not something that should be like be able to screw that you should be able to screw up given the gigantic resources that Google has. The image above should be champagne gold, while matte black and polished silver are presumably returning as well. The original was priced at $130, while the Metal Link is $200, which is like $300 less expensive than Apple's. Okay, that's funny. I don't know why this is so funny, but this... well, granted, it is kind of half the material of Apple's stainless steel link bracelet. But yeah, I wouldn't even recommend you get like the stainless steel link bracelet anymore, because... which model would you really pair it with, right? Except for like the silver stainless steel one. Like, the graphite does not match the black tone if you get like the darker stainless steel link bracelet. Obviously aluminum, maybe midnight could still somewhat match the dark one, but silver does not even feel that good with the natural look of stainless steel. Again, I'm using the word natural when describing metals. Yeah, it doesn't look good with titanium, so that's a little bit of a mess. Google at least has them like matching the material of the watch case here. The Apple Watch 2 metal slim band is presumably closer in price to the bigger metal. Oh, they do have a bigger metal bracelet. That's really nice. So do they have anything about the actual, like... Wait, what? Oh, the Essential phone. Yeah, I forgot that even existed. Google Tensor G4 reportedly set for just a minor upgrade over Pixel... Wait, what? Wait, it needs to move to Samsung's 3nm next year. What we know that Google is working on a big, fully custom Tensor chip for 2025. A new report sheds a bit of light on the stopgap that is Tensor G4. The chip set to show up in 2024's Pixel 9 series. The third iteration of Google's Tensor, as previously reported, is expected to be a rather big upgrade. Much more modern hardware and new layout, improvements to Samsung 4nm manufacturing process, and an apparent upgrade to cooling. So what is happening with Where Tensor G3 is known as Zuma, Tensor G4 is reportedly codenamed Zuma Pro, also apparently the same architecture. The chip is still made with Samsung's help in manufacturing and is apparently based on RIP Current 24 development board, up from Tensor G3 RIP Current board. Okay, whatever that means. As for what's actually new, it's hard to say at this point. Yeah, I kind of would assume so, but the codenames certainly imply a fairly tame year-over-year update. Yeah, they don't actually have anything to say. That's a bummer. I either wanted to complain or be like positively surprised. Google's domains, Pixel. Okay, like, is there nothing in Pixel? Comment: Android users can enjoy the benefit of iPhone's USB-C, while old owners complain. Okay, whatever. This is Galaxy FE, don't give a shit about that. This is by the way what differentiates this channel from like a regular news channel, especially one that is like very widely focused. I will not be covering stuff that I don't care about. Xiaomi first Wear OS watch looks like a Galaxy watch. Google confirmed. Oh yeah, this is actually like I do want to cover this briefly because it still has to do with the Pixel Watch, and when will I ever cover the Pixel Watch again, right? Briefly making sure that my stream still works fine. At this moment, this is by the way from Google directly, so I don't have to go into it like into the whole article because I know what this is. At this moment, we don't have any repair options for the Google Pixel Watch. If your watch is damaged, you can contact the Google Pixel Watch customer support to check your replacement options. Now, what does that mean? Now, Apple is no stranger to sometimes having products that either because they launched very early, like very recently, they don't have any repair options, mainly because replacement parts are still not available, as all parts are going into the production of new models. That's kind of what happened with Linus Tech Tips iMac Pro, if people remember. But what also applies is that Apple definitely does have products like the AirPods, like the Buds at the very least, that are not very accessible for reasonable repair. So what you get is a replacement part. Now, Apple's watch is definitely not completely unrepairable. If you judge by iFixit, yes, it is pretty much unrepairable because they're giving them it a DIY score when it comes to repairs. However, Apple internally definitely does have repair process, and they use it. I had an Apple Watch Series 2 that had water damage, which it shouldn't have gotten, right? After being in the pool. So, and it's a watch that was rated for 50 meters in the water. So what I did is I sent Apple like a really hearty email, you could say, in like, or an explainer on their like support page, and I explained that I never used the watch in like disregard of Apple's guidelines for how the watch is used. Apple themselves has like images of it being used in pools. In fact, even of it being used while washing yourself with soap and stuff, which I didn't do. So I said that literally the only exposure that my Apple Watch ever had was water, and with that also chlorined water because of the pool, which is 100% covered by regular use cases for the Apple Watch. Now, the reason why I was so detailed in outlining all this is because the situation when it comes to water damage at that point was always a little questionable, right? I had the first gen Apple Watch, obviously didn't have any damage with that, certainly no water damage, but Apple like accepted it, repaired it fully, and sent it back, and it had the exact same scratch. I could show it if like it's my mom's Apple Watch now, it's in the other room. and it still had like one specific scratch that I knew it had. So I knew they definitely sent me back my own Apple Watch. Now I have no idea if they ended up opening it or doing anything else. Maybe they replaced only like the speakers, which were a problem primarily, which also created like in the software like constantly rebooting. But obviously I understand that Apple had like their little access for rebooting Apple Watches that I don't have access to. So I do assume that some hardware stuff probably was still fixed, and I've heard from other people. Obviously I know that to me maybe they did only do some software stuff, but I know that other people have gotten their Apple Watches repaired rather than replaced. And if this was something happening with the Apple Watch, I guarantee you people would be up in arms. Now, I do understand that the Pixel Watch is relatively new. It kind of doesn't look that easy to open up, to access internal parts. Though to me, I wouldn't ever fix like a smartwatch by myself or even do like battery replacements inside. To me, I would always want to have a professional do it. Also, just look at, with it being rounded, how much internal space is wasted, given that most of the internal components are rectangular, right? The battery is rectangular. Like, I assume what is like the speakers or the haptics is rectangular. And then look at that wasted space here where you have like the inputs for the buttons and then nothing else basically. Like maybe there's like a display control cable or something that leads to like the motherboard, but yeah, this does not look good. Also, interestingly enough, the way that their board looks internally looks very similar to how Apple usually shows like their system on the package S series Apple Watch chips to look like. So coincidence? And last but not least, if there's something interesting about the Pixel 8 in general, yeah, I don't care about the OnePlus. The Galaxy Watch already has the Apple Watch double tap feature. Jesus Christ. This dick measuring is like so annoying. Samsung is still trying to make its emojis better. Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't look that bad. Apple still wins when it comes to this. Galaxy's blah blah blah. Pixel tablet gets repair guides. Wait, what? Oh, yeah, it's been on the market for quite a while. Remember when people were saying that, oh, because this is such a simple to use product, that it is such an easier buy than an iPad, and then everybody forgot about it? Like, this is always like, whenever people talk about like Apple device killer, something is an AirPods killer, something is an iPad killer, something is an Apple Watch killer. Like, this is what they praise, because everybody likes an underdog story, but nothing ever happens out of it. Okay, there's a watch unlock, good for you. Starfield, blah blah blah. Is there really like nothing new when it comes to the Pixel 8? Pixel 8. Okay. Oh yeah, like I think I've covered like that's really like nice curved design. This is, I think it's the Pro, right? I do like the blue color. It's very what is it called? It's very Sierra blue from the 13 Pro, but a little more saturated, which I like. It does not look very serious. But it's not like I fully agree with Apple that pros need to be serious, but this does look a tad too playful for me. Yeah, so Oh my god, we got so much, but we don't have something like a tensor benchmarks, right? Yeah, I've covered all this stuff. Well, yeah, that's basically it then for this stream. Finally, a sub 1 hour stream for me. I'm very glad that the channel is doing as well as it does, given the, well, how we started, right? And given the nature of the content that I'm putting out, I'm really glad to for all of your support. Please do all the fun YouTube stuff, the liking, the sharing, the subscribing. Consider following me on Twitter and supporting me directly through Patreon. Both of those things are in the description of my channel. So I'll see you guys next time. Thank you all so much. This is Marc Tech, tuning out.